Hi everybody, I'm back with another review for you. I am going to be taking a look at Memento, which is a film you can find on Hoopla. It stars Guy Pearce and Carrie-Anne Moss and Joe Pantoliano. It is directed by Christopher Nolan of the Dark Knight trilogy fame, Dunkirk, Inception, so very, very illustrious director in his own right. I'm not going to go too heavy on plot summary this time because I want to get into why I happen to like this film so much, because I really do, and I strongly recommend the film. Essentially, it's just such an unconventional narrative. The movie begins, in essence, where it ends. You see Guy Pearce, who's the protagonist, you know nothing about him at this point. You see him kill another man. And from that point forward, the film is retracing his steps, how he got to this point, why he's killing this man, who he is. And the gist of it is that Guy Pearce had a wife. She was raped and murdered. Guy Pearce was in the house at the time. He was in the bedroom. The act was perpetrated in the bathroom. He kind of springs up. He hears that there's a tussle going on. And he kills one of the assailants. There's another assailant there. And, there's a fight that breaks out between Guy Pearce and this other assailant. Guy Pearce hits his head, which induces a condition in him where he can no longer remember things for more than 10 or 15 minutes. So he has no short-term memory. He can remember all the events leading up to the murder. He can remember the events of the murder itself. He remembers everything about himself. And so it's about him piecing together as best he can, because he's really severely inhibited. It's him piecing together with the help of a couple secondary characters, which is where Joe Pantoliano and Carrie-Anne Moss come in. They help him find out who this other murderer is. That's what he's hell-bent on. He's just trying to find out who is the other person that's responsible for killing his wife. And he sort of impresses on his body, he tattoos on his body certain clues, because he knows in 10 or 15 minutes he's going to forget them. So his body is filled with, little reminders as to point him, ways to point him in the right direction to find who the killer is. And simultaneously, if this isn't confusing enough, because it certainly sounds confusing the way I'm describing it, you find out that Guy Pearce was an insurance investigator. And that similarly, coincidentally, he was tasked with investigating a claim from someone that apparently had no short-term memory. So it was a condition that was very, very much akin to what Guy Pearce was experiencing. A man that had no short-term memory either. And it was Guy Pearce, because he was really great at his job, it was his job to prove that this man was essentially crazy. And that's the conclusion that comes out of it, is that this man that Guy Pearce investigated just was making the whole thing up. That this no short-term memory thing was just a farce, and that he was sort of, he was scamming the company. So there's these two really seemingly disparate plots that are interwoven together, and as the movie progresses, Guy Pearce and you, the viewer, realize that, boy, this is really a very severe condition, and yes, it does exist. So he's also sort of guilt-ridden in the fact that he remembers being the authoritative force that determined that, this other man was crazy. So that's a little bit about the plot. I absolutely love this movie, and it's just so smart, and it's just so unconventional, as I said. You're learning events in real time as Guy Pearce is. So, there's not so much these, you're not looking 10 steps ahead, because you're finding things out as they unfold in real time. And the importance of these objects that you think have no purpose, of these very nominal objects, of pens, of broken windows. I found myself on multiple occasions pausing the film to try and just understand how, in the end, that these objects are going to come into play. And this, by the way, is the second time I've seen this film. I saw this film once close to the time it came out. It came out in 2001. I probably saw it a few years later, 2005 or so, 2006. And I didn't remember too many of the details of the plot. And what's another remarkable feature, and why it's such a smart feature, is that the use of the unreliable narrator, which in this case Guy Pearce is, and his friend slash associate Joe Pantoliano is also an unreliable narrator. You find out pretty early on that people are out there to take advantage of him. Even Carrie Ann Moss doesn't appear to be who she says that she is. It's just an incredibly smart film, and all the elements mesh together so well. There's this really beautiful, understated score. It's really, really stylish. You have the events that took place in the past. You have when he was the insurance investigator, that's all shot in black and white. And the modern day events leading up to him finding out who his wife's killer is, they're all shot in color. It's smart, it's witty, it's well acted. Guy Pearce, who I love, he's an English actor. He probably does a more convincing American accent than I do. He's absolutely phenomenal. And it's just so incredibly well done. I'm not the biggest Christopher Nolan fan, but I have to say, if this was in anyone else's hands, I don't think that it would have worked out as effectively as it did. There's so much ambiguity in it, and I think that it's wonderful in this case. And ordinarily I'm someone that, I don't want to say that I like things spoon-fed to me, but I like to say definitively, this is how the film ended, and A, B, C, and D happened, and that's what led to the ending. Well, there's not a lot of that, because there's so much unreliability and there's so much ambiguity. And I combed through so many different resources after I ended up watching this movie. I went on YouTube and I was reading articles, trying to glean from these sources some sort of definitive answer as to, did this really happen? I mean, were these events taking place in his head? And it doesn't seem that anyone has an answer. Probably Christopher Nolan and his brother, who the screenplay is based off a short story that his brother kind of came up with. But it's absolutely brilliant. And in fact, it was really this one pertinent comment that I read on a YouTube video, which was great in its own interpretation of explaining the events. Someone said, boy, I bet there are not too many videos that have garnered so much traction, so much popularity 18 years after the movie came out, which means that, there were so many comments and there were so many likes, meaning that for new generations, this movie is still leaving behind so many questions. And I don't think that we're ever going to get a resolution, although they're talking about making some sort of a remake to this film. I think that's absolutely insane, but they're talking about making a remake for it. It's just a smart film, and Christopher Nolan is just, you could tell how exceptionally talented he is in the cast. And even though I didn't get an answer, and I'll probably never get an answer, I'm not someone that likes to rewatch movies unless I'm really, really passionate about that movie. I just watched it yesterday. I feel like I could watch it again today, and I would still pick out different objects, different pieces of clues that would probably perhaps provide an even greater significance to me than the last time I watched it. So strongly recommend it. It's probably one of my top 20 films of all time. It's a great film. It's got great reviews. Go watch it. So thank you for watching this review. I will hopefully be back for you with another one next week, and I will talk to you then. Thank you.